Right, I'm very pleased this afternoon to welcome Phil Harvey. Phil was Coldplay's first manager, managed them up until the release of Rush of Blood to the Head, and left the band for some reasons which we will go into at some point, I'm sure, so I won't spoil the story for now. And is currently Coldplay's creative director. So would you please welcome Phil Harvey.
Thanks, Justin.
I guess, shall we start then by saying how it all happened in the first place? How did you come about managing this band?
Yeah, it all came about because I'm just very old friends with Chris Martin, who's our singer. I grew up with him in Devon, and we went to school together as well. We were in bands at school, and we always dreamed about going into music together when we were older. Yeah, my initial ambition was to play music with him, but when it became apparent that I didn't have the requisite talent to actually play, I sort of got demoted to management.
So, when Coldplay first started, you were in the middle of your degree, weren't you? So were you aware that there was this band being formed? Or did you suddenly get the call one day to say, we need a manager, Phil, come and sort us out?
Oh no, I was very aware. I think I was there for this first rehearsal when they first started playing together in their flat in Camden, which is a tiny little flat. And then I was there. I think we've got a shot of the first gig. Oh no, this is their band plan. This is all stuff from Coldplay.com. I haven't really had time to sort of prepare a proper talk because we're actually finishing off our album right now. We're kind of, our last day is on Friday before we go to New York to mix. So it's kind of a really hectic time. So I'm just going to steal things off Coldplay.com. But hopefully it could be quite illustrative of the early days. This band plan, I remember we had it. It was stuck up on the wall in that flat, and just looking at it, it looks like most of the things that they tried to do came off. Rehearse with Champ. That's our drummer Will, who didn't really play the drums before he joined the band. Which I think gives you an impression of the extent to which we were just a bunch of friends who came together. Like, I hadn't done any management. I had no idea what I was doing. We were very naive, basically.
So you had no experience of management at all?
No, not of management. I was at Oxford University, and just to sort of get by financially, I ran some student club nights there, and so I think that gave me my first experience of how to book a venue and put an event on and print flyers and get people coming along. And so I think without that first experience of that, I wouldn't have had the confidence to become manager. So that kind of is how it happened.
So this was the first band plan, and so if this gig then gets signed, was it that quick? Or?
Yeah, that was pretty ambitious. I don't think that actually was how it went. We played many more gigs than that, but yeah, I can see there we've a studio demo. Anyway, I'll go through all these things. Will come up later. What have we got here? Starfish was their first name. I don't know if anyone's really into Coldplay, so I'm probably not going to go into too much detail about Coldplay, all the ins and outs of that, but hopefully if I just talk a little bit about those first days, then that might be helpful. And also I'd really welcome any questions, because then I'll know that I'm actually saying something useful. Normally there's a video that goes with this, but for some reason there isn't today. But anyway, so that was the first gig, and they recorded something else. And probably the only important thing to say about the first gig was that it was in a total dive in Camden. but we we sold it out. We had 120 friends come along, and that's probably the most important thing that made Coldplay get signed, was the fact that we had this bunch of friends, mostly from university, who came to every gig, and like they knew all the words to all the songs, and they really created an amazing atmosphere at every gig, so that when we finally did get someone from a record company to actually turn up, they were quite impressed because they could see that something was going on.
So what sort of things did you do in the early days to get label interest? What was the plan?
I was very naive, as I say, so I thought that I could just ring up the labels. Initially what happened was we went into a studio, a very small little studio. I think it cost sort of £200 for 2 days, and recorded 3 songs. It was this thing.
The Safety EP.
Safety EP. I won't inflict the audio on you, but it's actually quite good quality, and maybe I will just play a snippet in a minute, because it just shows that you can get quite decent audio out of really not very good equipment. And this was eventually played on Radio 1 and stuff, so in daytime on Radio 1. But we made the Safety EP, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. So I thought, I was very naive, and I thought that I could just send it out to the record companies, and they would come clamouring back to me and say, "What do you want? We want to sign you up." And that's not at all how it turned out. But
so what was the process then? Because was it Fierce Panda Coldplay got signed to initially? So how was that? Was that as a result of those demos, or just from the live experience? They got one.
Fierce Panda. I don't know if anyone's heard of Fierce Panda. Yeah.
Snow Patrol.
I think quite a few big bands were initially signed to Fierce Panda. Idlewild,
Snow Patrol.
Oasis. Maybe Fierce Panda. No, Fierce Panda put out something called Wibbling Rivalry, which was a recording of a conversation of Liam and Noel Gallagher. So I don't think that really counts as an official Oasis release. But anyway, Fierce Panda, really sort of legendary indie label in London for guitar bands, and they're headed up by this guy called Simon Williams, who is, I don't think he writes for NME anymore, but he was a really influential NME journalist throughout the 90s. And I think that it was basically finally getting him to hear our demo that proved to be the turning point, and he heard the Safety EP, and he then wanted to put something out on his own label, the Fierce Panda thing, and he also put us put us in the NME as a band to watch for 1999. And I think that first press exposure was the first time that actually we sort of got any notice at all.
How did he get to hear the EP?
I think someone from a publishing company knew him and said, "You should check out this band," and it was all very hodgepodge. I mean, I genuinely, there's no false modesty here. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I tried to read books on how to make it in the record business and stuff, and they would be reasonably useful, but in the end I can honestly say that the only thing that got the band signed was persistence, blind luck, and the fact that whenever they did take the stage in those early days, they put on a pretty impressive show for a bunch of scruffy students.
And had a good audience kind of there, backing them out. Yeah.
Mm.
Did you put any contracts in place with the band?
No. I don't know if you guys are performers or artists, and whether you're thinking of getting managers. And maybe it'll be useful for me to talk a bit about managing Chris, who's my best friend since we were very young.
Yeah.
And it might be useful because some of you might have people that you work with or want to work with that you know. But yeah, Chris and I went to school together, and we were best friends all through school. We lived very close to each other in Devon, so we were very close friends all the way up through teenage years. And there's definite pros and cons to working with someone that you're that close with, and Chris would be the first to say that as well. On the plus side, we sort of have that unspoken thing where we don't really need to. It's very free communication. There's not much that falls between the holes. We talk every day, and we create a lot of energy just by talking to each other. And I suppose there's a lot of trust there as well, and that's why I didn't really feel the need for a contract.
So what's the con side?
It can get a bit messy, definitely. It can. I mean, I don't think either Chris or I really like taking orders off the other one. So that can involve quite a lot of locking of horns.
So is it kind of hard then to find the dividing line between the friendship and the business relationship? Is that quite blurred?
Yeah, very much. We've given up trying to do that. Yeah, but it's impossible to sit down and talk about anything without the band coming up. So our friendship's really changed definitely from the early days.
So was there a point once Coldplay were signed that you kind of felt, well, no, actually we really should formalise this and have some sort of agreement, or was there ever a time when, say, the label wanted to do a bit of divide and rule and get their own person in, or has that still never been an issue?
No, I haven't really. I've been very lucky in my experiences with the music business. I expect you might hear lots of really bad stories about record labels being exploitative and trying to get control of things and trying to interfere with things, but I have to say I've been very lucky. We work with a label called Parlophone, who are a subsidiary of EMI, and we specifically chose them because we could just tell, well, we thought that as far as major labels go, they were pretty genuine and seemed to have our best interests at heart.
And so who else was interested in you at the time? Was there a kind of bidding war then after the Fierce Panda releases, and once you'd kind of got a bit of a name for yourselves, was everyone piling in? Because I remember there being a buzz around the industry about this band called Coldplay.
Yeah, there were loads of labels interested, and but they all came at once, because for the first 8 months we had absolutely no joy at all. I couldn't, they wouldn't take my calls, and all these safety EPs, which I only made 500 copies of, almost all of them got thrown in the bins of all these record companies, because I was sending them in unsolicited, and in those days we didn't even have a website, so we couldn't direct them to MySpace or anything. We just sent in a physical CD, and they all got thrown away. So
presumably they're selling on eBay now.
Yeah, I think they're quite valuable now.
So did you sign to a publishing company or a record label first?
We signed to a record label first, and we were very lucky because I had a very good lawyer down in London, and he gave very balanced advice, and he wasn't really he wasn't a lawyer that seemed particularly interested in chasing the quick buck. He took quite a long-term view, and so he advised us on capping our advance at, I think we capped it at 100 grand, when we could have gone to, I'm sure, to 7 figures if we'd really pushed, because we had so many major labels interested, but we kind of wanted to keep it as low as possible so that we didn't get into so much debt with the record company, so that they in turn didn't have such big expectations of us to sell lots of records.
I suppose it means it keeps the control in your hands. If you don't owe the record company, if you owe them 500 grand after the first album, then they can start interfering a bit more.
well, they own you much more then. But we just worked out exactly how much money we would need to survive for 12 months, which is how long we thought it would take to record the album. And then on top of the 100 grand, we probably had to borrow another, well, probably more than 100 grand to make the first album, and then probably 50 grand as tour support, which is where they kind of pay for you to go on tour, because when you're a small band, you don't make a profit.
So was your first major tour then as headliners, or did they have to kind of buy you support slots on a larger artist?
No, they didn't do that. I should say that you probably can make a profit as a small artist, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't get really paid very much for the gigs. But I'm sure if you did it wisely, with a little bit more nous than we did, then maybe you could.
So what sort of venues were you playing on that first tour?
Just sort of 200 or 300.
And then, presumably, what was the point really then? Was it the release of the first album? Where was the point that you suddenly realised, crikey, we're actually quite a big band?
Well, so what happened? There was a song called Shiver. That was our first single, and that got to number 35, but that didn't really feel like much of a success. I mean, it was nice. It was great to get in the top 40, but we still no one had ever heard of. I think there was a song called Yellow, which everyone probably absolutely despises now. But when we recorded it, we didn't have any idea that it would be a big. Well, I think Chris maybe had an inkling, but I didn't think it would be a big hit. And then I remember very well being on tour. Oh, not what we do. But yeah, being on a promotional tour in Europe, kind of just giving a few interviews to, I think it was a French newspaper, and I remember someone ringing me and telling me that the midweek on the single was number 4. That's when I thought, oh shit, here we go. And it was great, but it was quite anxiety provoking as well, because I didn't really feel that prepared for it.
And I was reading somewhere that at this time, unlike say a lot of major label bands that would have a management company and a PR person and a whole machine behind them, it was effectively you in an office.
Yeah,
somewhere.
very much.
So what was your day-to-day like then? What were the kind of tasks?
It wasn't day-to-day, it was all the days blurred into one, because I didn't really leave the office very much. It was it's funny actually, because Coldplay kind of gets seen now as this really big machines, major label machine, but it wasn't really always like that. And even today, we really don't get very much outside help from anyone. Kind of the artwork and the music and all the ideas for the stuff that you see kind of comes from within the 4 band members and me. And in those days, I just had a very lonely office in Battersea in South London, and I have really bad memories of spending long days in there on my own, and it was pretty miserable, to be honest.
So were you having to kind of do the sort of legal and the admin side, and I mean, what was it you could kind of devolve out to other people, and were you getting lumbered with everything? Were you having to liaise with the label a lot? Or?
Oh yeah. But we had a really good team of people, but I guess, I think what happened with us was because they went from being really small to really, really big very quickly. Like when Yellow came out, it was kind of got played on radio all over the world, and the album went in number 1 in Britain, and suddenly EMI, who'd been very protective of us at first and were sort of nurturing us, suddenly we were like their top priority artist internationally. And unfortunately, it was only me in the office. I hadn't really built up the support that the sort of machine that most big bands would have, which was okay for a while, but it did take its toll, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah.
So, if you were kind of doing that again now, what would be the jobs you'd have got help with early on to kind of, and what would you have kept to concentrate on? Sounds like it's the more creative elements with the bits you enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not a very organised person, so I'm not very good at the administration side of thing. So I would have got someone. In the end, I got a really good a lady called Estelle, who came on as my assistant, and then when I left the band, she actually took over and became the manager. So it was quite an organic process.
I had a follow-on question and my mind's gone blank. Andrew, do you have a question?
Yeah, what would you say makes a good manager? I mean, if you're a band, for instance, and you have several managers approach you who want to manage you, or you approach several managers, how would you decide which one to go with?
Which one you find it easiest to communicate with? Which one you sort of can talk to the easiest? Which one you just have that inherent sense of trust, I suppose? Because it's all very well having contracts, but really the contract should just be like this fallback situation for the worst case scenario. Really, you want someone that you can trust just on a day-to-day level, not only financially, but someone that you can trust to represent you in a sort of in a way that you'd want to be represented. Because that's how I felt whenever I went to whenever I had a meeting. I always just felt like I was speaking for the band.
And is that something? I get the impression the band were always very happy for you to do, that you could really kind of represent. Were there times that you could almost make decisions on their behalf, and that would be acceptable, or is there always this consultation process back and forth with the band?
Mostly consultation.
Yeah.
They're pretty keen in general to be involved in every area. So yeah, and like I said, that was one of the advantages of being so close to them, that I was on the phone to them, for several times a day. So things didn't fall between the gaps.
I've read somewhere that it's Coldplay's managed a bit as a democracy. Everyone, even though Chris is clearly the songwriter, that everyone gets a pretty even share of the money. Is that true? And has that been an agreement that's always been in place, or is that something that kind of came along as?
No, that's like been one of the big pillars of the band, that money gets split equally.
And is that publishing money as well, though? Or, right.
Do you remember when that decision was made?
Well before we had any money.
Right.
Yeah. I think there was, and it was bloody important that we did have it in place before the money came in, because when it did come, it was a lot for people who, because we weren't used to it, and so it was a lot of money, and it was really important that we had that sort of locked in as the way it would work, because otherwise I think it could have got a bit grabbing.
Did you actually sign a contract to that effect, or did you just agree?
I think that was just an agreement at first.
And that's never been disputed since?
No.
So what made you leave the band? I think part of the reason, wasn't it, was that you were just trying to do 7 jobs at the same time, and you actually became quite unwell, and that was part of the reason. But were there other reasons that made you want to kind of get away from managing Coldplay?
Well, I've left the band probably 3 times, I think.
You keep coming back.
Yeah. The first time was because I got really ill with, it was basically exhaustion, but it was just thyroid disorder, which meant that my metabolism kind of stopped. So it was pretty bad. And so I left for 6 months then, and my assistant Estelle took over, and then I came back. That was midway through Parachutes. I always remember it was the day of the Brit Awards, and I think they'd been nominated for all the Brit Awards, and we won Best Band and Best Album, and I kind of had this feeling inside me that it should be the best day of my life. I just felt so totally exhausted and overwhelmed by it. It was not a happy memory at all. But then I came back and we made Rush Blood to the Head, which is the second album, that was even more stressful than the first one. And I think by the time we got to the mixing of that, my relationship with Chris in particular was kind of quite strained, and something had to give. And so, because at that point I was still the manager, and we just had this continual clashing, because we were, as friends, we clashed a lot as well. We were kind of competitive, and so that continued on. And so that's when I left the second time, and then and I went back to university because I'd initially dropped out of university to do the band, and then I went back to university, and then last year Chris sort of started thinking about making the next album, and he said, "Come on, Phil, let's kind of tailor you a role that will work out okay." And so now that's why I have come back with a slightly wanky title of creative director, because I couldn't think what else to call it. But it just means that I kind of I just have a bit of input in the music and videos and all the stuff that you see in here, basically, the website.
And so, can you tell us a bit about the new album and when that's coming out?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone will be interested though, but yeah, there'll be an album next year. Yeah, we nearly finished it.
And so, what's the schedule like then? Because I'd imagine the first album was probably recorded, mixed quite quickly, and I imagine these things get longer and longer with each time. What's the time span from Chris sitting down working on some songs to that going to recording, mixing, and release? How long does that process take?
This one was quite long because we were really conscious that everyone probably had enough of Coldplay, and they were quite overexposed after X and Y, which is the last album. And so we kind of decided that it might be a good idea to disappear for a bit. So we were really taking our time, and we just sort of built our own little studio, that old cliche. But it's a very small, scruffy little studio in North London, which no one would have any idea was a recording studio. And we've just been locked in there for the last 18 months, pretty much.
And is there, I remember reading somewhere there was, how many songs that were turned away for the previous album? There was quite a large pool of songs, wasn't there, from X and Y that didn't get used. Does Chris always write a lot more songs than end up getting used? Yeah,
he's very prolific, but it's not all good. Some people would say none of it, but anyway, yeah, we try and keep up the quality control quite. Do you
record all the songs then?
We start recording loads and then just heaps get scrapped. That's kind of like my worst. That's the bit of my job that's quite hard, because I will get called into the studio, and often the atmosphere in the studio is very tense, and it's not. I don't know how it is with other bands, but with us, it's not like the most fun place to be. It's kind of very. It's tense, yeah. There's lots of laughter, but it can get quite heavy. And the difficult times are when I get called in and I walk in and there's like stony faces facing me, and no one's speaking, and I can tell that they're in the middle of some argument, and they'll just sit me down in a chair right in front of the monitor speakers and say, "Phil, listen to this." And then press play, and then I have to kind of give my verdict on it, just without any context whatsoever. And you feel a certain responsibility, because you've got the life or death of a song in your hands, because they're quite sensitive to criticism, and the kind of any kind of inkling that it's not the best song they've ever written means that it tends to get chucked out.
So that's kind of the role of a producer, isn't it?
Yeah. And we've been very lucky with producers on this album. We've got Brian Eno, which lots of people, which you'll probably all know. He's been working with us. He worked with the U2 and Talking Heads and David Bowie. And he's been kind of overseeing the project. And also a guy called Marcus Drabs, who did the our last Arcade Fire album.
And so, what's Eno like to work with in the studio? How much of what he does is about creating an atmosphere, or how much is?
Yeah, that's massively what he does
That's
actually. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. He doesn't. He's not. He's really gently, softly spoken, and it's very much like having a lovely, cuddly headmaster in there. He kind of like is quietly directing proceedings without ever raising his voice, and it's been really good actually, because it's kind of taken a lot of strain off Chris, because Chris normally takes control in the studio pretty much, and on the first 3 albums he kind of well, how can I put it, he's a forceful personality in the studio, but Brian he's not more forceful, but Chris has so much respect for him that it kind of works. So I guess maybe that's another important thing, is to work with people you actually have respect for.
So was there an element of Chris wanting to co-produce the previous albums, then wanting to kind of have more control over the production process? Or?
Well, I mean, the band did co-produce all the albums.
Sure. And will Eno be credited as producer on this, or will it still
Mm.
be so? That's a different thing. And does he use any? Eno was famous in the 70s for a thing called his oblique strategies cards. Does he come up with any oblique strategies? It's this deck of cards where you just do something random just to change the vibe in the studio. Does he
Yeah.
still go that route? Just do
We've done it a few times, yeah. We've had musical gym, which is just like when they all have to pretend like they're tortoises, or I don't know, like, do funny, like approach playing their instruments in funny ways, and then he hands them all different cards and says, "You're a ballerina in the Russian ballet. This is how you play," or "You're a crocodile who's just caught a big buffalo." That kind of weird stuff. That's probably not doing justice to how weird his suggestions often are.
Do you, when Chris is writing, does he present a whole song to the band, or does he present an idea? I mean, how much is written in the studio and how much is written before?
It varies, but Chris is normally comes with. It varies actually. Sometimes he just comes with a chord sequence, and sometimes it's just a melody, but I don't know. It's weird. He does write he writes the melodies and the lyrics, but the contribution of the other 3 is enormous. From the first demo to, I think on here there's a song. I won't inflict that on you. But I think actually this, what is here, is like this is the kind of thing Chris will come in with.
I'm not sure it's going to play for us, I think.
Oh really?
Oh, it's not looking like it, is it?
Oh.
Never mind.
That's the website that I
Okay.
designed. Anyway,
That's probably our fault rather than yours for the flash plug-in or something.
yeah,
some
maybe.
such thing.
Yeah, I think that might be it. Anyway, so yeah, he comes in. I think that was something from Trouble that was just on. He played it on guitar, and it sounds really kind of jaunty and bouncy. And then when it goes through the process of being jammed out, it eventually turned out into the soppy piano ballad that you all know and love.
Well, should we? I don't have any questions for Phil.
What did you study at university?
First time around I did classics, which is mind-bogglingly boring. And that was a 4-year course, and but I dropped out in the 3rd year.
But you went back to do psychology.
And now I'm doing psychology, and I'm I'm training as a clinical psychologist, which is probably not totally unrelated to being a band manager.
So will that kind of work ongoing? Will you be able to kind of have the time to do that and still be involved with Coldplay? Do you think? Is there a strategy for that?
I think the band are very accommodating with me, and they're very good to me. They kind of let me do as much or as little as I want, and so yeah, it should be. Hopefully, I'm hoping that the 2 things can run parallel.
Questions? Yeah.
What's like
remember lots of faxes, lots of emails, lots of requests from the record company. That's a big one, actually. Loads of. Are you going to be a manager, or are you a manager? Yeah. Lots of requests from the record company for they want you to, because the record company wants you to do as many things as you can possibly fit into the schedule, and the manager's job is to kind of accommodate the record company's requests to a certain point, but then look after the band and make sure that they don't totally run themselves into the ground. And so looking after the schedule is a big part of it. And the request could run from doing a TV show in Holland to doing an interview with Rolling Stone to doing phone interviews. They want you to do gigs, to launch stuff. There's a never-ending supply of things that they want you to do.
So it's kind of changed, really, hasn't it, from the beginning when you're pressing to get all this done, and now they're coming to you saying, "Can you do it for us?"
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, the amount it changed. Yeah, because my job as a manager was just to go out and grab whatever I could, and then it became just pushing
And you had to
stuff away.
Acting as a buffer.
Yeah.
And how much was that your job when they were doing sort of press and TV and what have you? Was that part of the job as well to kind of act as a buffer between whoever was doing that and the band? Would you kind of go along and supervise those kind of things?
But I went along, but I'm not sure how much good I did. I just liked going along to Jules Holland and stuff, so it was fun.
We got questions, yeah.
What's yours and the band's stance on how the music industry is becoming now? Such things like, Radiohead albums being released for free. Because surely Coldplay must be at sort of level now where they could do something like that if they wanted to. Yeah.
God, well, we looked at the Radiohead thing with great interest. I mean, Radiohead are one of the big bands that we love, and when we saw that they'd done that, I think we all felt a bit jealous that unfortunately we can't really do that yet because we're still locked in with our contract with EMI, so we couldn't really give it away for free. But we're definitely trying to look at ways of making the release interesting and appealing, and for reasons for people to actually buy the record instead of just download it for free, which they could and will.
What length of contract did you sign with EMI?
5 albums. Yeah. But I think it might be a bit longer now. I think we've got a little bit longer to go.
Will you be looking to...
Anyway, I'm not one of these people that complains about being locked into a record contract, because record companies, especially now, everyone's like got their knives out, really wanting to say it's death to the record companies and good riddance because they're so greedy. And yeah, they have been really greedy. But I think if we're honest, they do serve some good purposes, especially in the initial stages when you don't have any money and you haven't got the. I don't know if it's different with other genres of music, but we kind of needed a studio, and we needed equipment, and with me as a manager, frankly, we needed a bit of guidance. So I'm not one. I love the people at Parlophone. I have really good, they're friends. So I haven't really had the bad experiences that you hear about, but maybe we've just been lucky.
Would you stay with them then, or would you look to make your own label?
Well, it's quite a long way off, but I think the band would love to do something like what Radiohead did.
And I suppose there's another issue, or maybe it's not an issue, I don't know, but sort of oft talked about Chris Martin's solo career.
Oh God.
How would that work?
God forbid.
Really? Didn't go there.
I think Chris would be the first person to say that that's not something that really appeals to him.
That's interesting. Have some more questions? Okay.
Would you ever consider managing a different band that you weren't mates with after Coldplay?
I would have done. And well, the answer is no, but it's not because I wouldn't want to work with someone that I wasn't friends with already. It's because with Coldplay, it kind of happened so big and fast and went to such heights so quickly that it would kind of be anything else would just couldn't possibly like replicate that launch, and it might always feel like I wasn't quite living up to what happened before, and also I think maybe it just was unique circumstances as well that I was such good friends with them. That's why it worked well, because I think that's why I think if I did have if I was a decent manager, and some people did say that I was, then it was only because I was such good friends with them. I believed in them so much. I really loved their music, and so when I had to represent them, I kind of found that I had this inner strength that came just from the fact that I was representing them, not because normally I'm quite a passive, not too forceful kind of person, but if I felt like someone was messing with the band, then this other side of me would kind of come out.
Did you find that's common of all managers that you've come across? Do you find there's some managers who are just doing it for the money, or do you think they're all doing it for the passion?
I wouldn't say that they're all doing it for the money.
You can name names. It's okay.
I'd say they're all doing it for the buzz.
Yeah.
It's a big buzz, and all the managers I know are really decent people with real integrity and just really want their artists to do well, and they love being part of. Most managers are quite frustrated musicians as well, I think, and they want to be part of a great band. But I probably shouldn't say that about all managers, but that's certainly, I love being part of it. Yeah. But all the managers I've ever met, like Paul McGuinness, the U2 managers, was my big hero. Well, yeah, he was my big, he was the template that I wanted to follow, kind of. And when I met him, I was not disappointed at all. He had an incredible presence about him. I was really impressed.
David, you've got a question?
Right, yeah, just a couple of questions here.
Do you need a microphone?
No. That's okay. I was going to say, where you say you get a lot of creative input for some of the things that go on, like your artwork and stuff. I don't know, people might know in here, but you see XY cover for the thing. What was the code? What was it?
I don't really know, because I wasn't actually really around for that.
Who made it though?
Well, they have this guy called Mark Tappin, who they do all their artwork with, who's like a graphic designer. So he did it. I wasn't really around when Chris discovered that code, whatever it is. It's some kind of, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's some kind of color code, but and also where the squares are, it represents each.
You don't know what it means.
You can tell. I really don't know.
Just another sort of like 2-in-1 question. You sort of answered this, but with you sort of working with Coldplay, maybe not so much on the last 2 albums, but could you manage another group or another act at the same time, do you reckon, or would it be too much as a manager?
No, once Parachutes had come out and then Rush Blood to the Head, it was too big. It was like, it would have been too much. I'm pretty sure that Paul McGuinness, I think he took on, because he manages U2 obviously, I think he took on PJ Harvey as well.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know, some managers I'm sure have a big enough machine that can deal with it. But my machine was pretty small.
Sorry to hog you. The last question was like, you see with your little projects beforehand, like your EPs and stuff, and just like your promotion when you was talking about 1998, you were getting started. I didn't have a clue in. Like, how many of those do you bring out, like EPs and stuff like that before?
We did 2 EPs. We did one called the Safety EP, which was just 500 copies, and that was money that what happened was, when I first came on as manager, what I did was I just decided that all the Camden promoters were just taking the piss really, and so I put on our own gig and we booked out a big venue, and which I think is a really quite a good thing to do, to not to sort of do your own thing, take the bull by the horns. And anyway, we made about £1,000 from that gig, and then I put all that money into making that EP, and then 500 copies of that came out, and then we sent that copy to this guy at Fierce Panda, and then we did one single with Fierce Panda, and then that got played like on Radio 1 a bit, and then we went on to EMI.
As a band, you know, when you were starting out, did you give yourself like a time scale before you sort of sucked it in?
Yeah. I came so close to sacking it in because I sort of, I think we hoped that, on that band plan thing, it said 5 gigs and then get signed. I think that's kind of how we thought it would be, but it was much more, I think it was much more like 25 gigs until we got signed. And up until about the 20th gig, we didn't have a sniff of any record company interest whatsoever. And it all changed when we went to, what happened was we went to In the City. Have you heard of that? It's like an unsigned bands festival, often in Manchester. And one A&R person happened to just come along to our gig and liked it. And from there, she kind of told her friends about it, and that's how it all came about. But it was about 2 weeks before In the City, I was gonna just say to Chris, you know, this isn't working out. I'm obviously, you need a manager that actually has connections, and then it just was luck really that happened.
Did you have a website at that point?
No.
So it was a lot harder in those days.
I think it's
not that long really. But
yeah, I think it was harder in one sense, but it's harder nowadays because there's so many bands with websites. So
Yeah.
it's hard to get noticed in that sense, I think.
What's the best way to sort of get spotted by them? Is it gigging, or is it sending EPs away, or sort of having like the whole package? Is it anything like that?
Well, for us as a kind of guitar band, it was gigging. So once we got one A&R person to come to one of our gigs, then it all kind of opened from there because the gigs were good, and so they had a real atmosphere. And also that NME, there's a piece, 1999.
Slamack Live from Radio 1, and we can go across now to our Maida Vale studios for a band who I actually came across playing a gig at a place called the Barfly in Camden a few weeks ago, and they were terrific, so we got them on the programme. Hello, Coldplay.
You might want to listen to this, it's quite funny. This is like their first Lamac session.
Tonight. It's steeped in history.
Oh. It might come back. 1999. Oh, is it this one?
Seems to either play it automatically or not.
Okay, it's obviously.
Oh, hang on, something's happening.
No, this one is. Anyway, this is just the defining moment, definitely, when I finally knew that it was going to work out, and when I knew that I could drop out of uni, was when we got our first mention in NME, and like there was something about being, I don't know, I think record company people can be quite sheep-like, and as soon as this one person champions the band, then everyone follows, kind of. It's really unfortunate that that's the way it is, but you kind of just got to get one little foot in the door. And we had this guy called Simon Williams who heads the Fierce Panda record label, and he liked us and he put us in NME, and
Still loading.
I think I'm going to get rid of that because
we're going to have to
We are gonna
wrap
have
it
to
up anyway.
We've probably got time for one more question. One quick question. Yeah.
What's the best way to approach a record company?
to approach.
You said send the CD wasn't getting any news.
Hmm.
So what did you have to be able to come? What needed?
Yeah, that's hard because it's really difficult to get them to actually pay any attention. And I remember when I went into EMI, I went in and I saw like the bin. It was just full of demos, like massive pile of demos. It was so dispiriting to see like all those people's dreams in like one massive bin. And the A&R man, God bless him, and he's you know, people at Parlophone and A&R are really good, but they had no intention of going through those bins. You know, they'd sit around and do other things, but they wouldn't actually listen to demos. They wait for a tip from something. So I think I wasted a lot of time sending in unsolicited stuff to the record companies. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. But
at Warner's, we used to have the receptionist listen to all the demos that came in.
Did she filter the good ones up though?
No, she filtered the bad ones up actually, because she had no taste. There we go. So who knows what's lying in the bottom of that bin even now.
But so creating a buzz then?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I'd say do it yourself, create your own buzz, put it on your own gigs, put out your own single, and get noticed. Don't try and get the attention. Don't make them come to you, kind of. I know that sounds a bit the wrong way around, but if they can come to you, then you know you've done it the right way. Don't have expectations that they're gonna, you know, be excited to get your phone call when you first ring up, which I think I was. I thought I had this feeling that, oh, I've got this amazing CD. People are going to be so pleased to hear it, and like they didn't give a shit.
I'm probably going to have to wrap it up there. Thanks to Phil.